If you think you're going to get a 5 or an 8 or a 11 times multiple, you better be out of the business and you better be non-operational in the business, because if you are the business, you are trapped in the business of your own making. No one's going to pay anything for it.
What are the different segments of the business that you focus on so that they have the maximum revenue potential for that exit?
If there's a strategic acquisition, you don't have to fix the entire business. Here's the stuff that we have to fix. Here's the stuff we don't need to touch. It's not going to increase your valuation.
In terms of removing a founder, it has to do something with hiring, or is it more systems?
Most of the problems for founders are people problems, right? If you can't run and manage effective people, and if you can't recruit epic talent, and if they can't come in and step in and run and manage and lead a department for you, you are deficient of the skills to be able to solve the problem.
What are the best business models for exiting?
Like, here's the thing. We work with designers, architects, multi-location businesses, product businesses, online marketplaces. You would assume that SaaS businesses are probably going to be the highest multiples, but you do the right roll-up and structure the business properly, you'll be able to achieve the same or better multiples just by achieving that.
As per usual, we got a legend coming into the show. Today's guest built his first 8-figure business by the age of 23. He exited that business 5 years later, and then spent the next 11 years coaching over 600 CEOs and founders across 5 different countries, generating over 120 million in additional revenue for his clients. But the more founders he worked with, the more he saw the same problem. Brilliant operators building businesses that couldn't run without them. So he codified everything he had learned into a single operating system, the ExytOS. In April 2023, he launched EXYT. 16 months later, he scaled it to 3.6 million in revenue, and he will be breaking down that for us because as cool as it sounds, it brought some issues. But essentially, through that system, he has brought 500 million in client revenue under his advisory and guided hundreds of founders through the process of becoming operationally optional. Please welcome the legend, Mr. Andrew Sparks.
Very good. Good to be here.
Andrew, you have helped hundreds of founders build businesses that run without them. When a founder first comes to you, what is the single most common reason their business can't function without them?
Founder dependency, which is they build the machine around them. So, I was a plumber, dropped out of school at 15. I went to TAFE. At TAFE, you get your license, quote unquote, on how to be a great technician. And getting a technical certificate and being good at a skill doesn't guarantee that you can be great at building a company. And I think when many people start their businesses, essentially their first hire is because they're drowning and they need somebody to do some of the tasks. But then they scale that and they have 5 and 10 and sometimes 15 people that they're handing out tasks to. And fundamentally, they are the center of the universe and everything comes back to them.
What do you actually mean when you say making a founder operationally optional?
Yeah, making a founder operationally optional means that you are not the central nucleus of the business, right? The operating system often is all of the thoughts in your head. While that stays inside of your head, then you are the central point of every decision. People can't make decisions without you. And so the objective is, I'm never going to go and sit on the beach 40 hours a week. I want to build something, I want to work hard, I like doing that, but it's got to be the right work instead of stuck in the weeds of the operations of the business. And so the operational optional statement comes back to the idea that once you build the team and the systems around you, you then get to write your own job description, or you should do it in advance, but you write your own job description, which is the work that you need to do, which is the highest value work for the company. And then therefore you're able to delegate roles out, build systems and processes, install people or AI or other things to be able to take the low value work away from you so that you can work on the highest value work. And then, some people that we work with want to work 10 hours a week. Other people want to work 50 hours a week, but it's always on the right work or the highest value work, the biggest problems. So my job in my company is I'm solving the biggest problems in the company always, and I'm always looking for the biggest constraint. And so I love doing that, but it's a deep work that you can't be in the day-to-day of the business if you're solving those problems properly.
And it's having that mental space, right? To be able to even focus on finding what's the right constraint to pour all the resources to then unlock the next level of growth. Now, for founders and business owners that are listening to this right now, can you articulate how can a founder diagnose that he's right now being the bottleneck, that he's the problem?
Depends on what industry you're in, but the problems are pretty common. If you're in construction, you're probably, the phone rings 100 times a day or more. It's customers, it's team that work for you, and there's always, little problems that that people could solve on their own, but they don't. If it's white collar, so we work with, all different companies, blue collar, white collar, and everything in between, product businesses as well, SaaS businesses, and basically all roads lead to you. And so whether it's a tap on the shoulder, got a minute meeting, hey boss, you got a minute, can I check this, can I ask this, what do we do about this problem? Everything just comes back to you. You're still able to, client side, clients are still coming to you directly instead of going to team or systems or infrastructure. That's when you're the bottleneck. And, if you were to go and take a week or a month off and the whole thing would collapse, that means you're really stuck. If the whole thing wouldn't collapse, but it'd be pretty shaky, there's just kind of varying levels of where people are at in their businesses at the moment. But if you can't step away from your business for a couple of weeks and take a holiday, you are 100% the bottleneck.
For you personally, back when basically you built this great business, but you were the bottleneck, how did that present it to you in your life? What would that represent it on your day-to-day when you were the bottleneck of your own business?
Well, it's happened several times. So obviously getting Exit started a few years ago, there was a lot of roads that led to me as well. I didn't start, that business with all the capital in the world. But in the first business and in this business, it was just, the phone rings 100 times a day. People come to you for decisions, or people do make they make decisions, but they make fundamentally what would be the wrong decisions based on where their company's at. Because as a founder, you see across all of the departments, right? Or you have somebody that does, but we assume people are stuck in their business. You're the one that knows how the entire ecosystem of the business works. You may even have managers in place, but those managers fundamentally aren't managing. They're essentially sitting in seats, but still asking you questions. And so that was it for me. And it was that people were in seats and they weren't managing. They weren't leading their departments. They weren't growing things. They were just sitting in a seat, taking a paycheck in a lot of cases. And so that's a mistake of, that's my responsibility. And it's just about how you release those bottlenecks from yourself and get them into systems and infrastructure and team to free yourself up.
Now, you built that 8-figure business, right? You exited that, and eventually that led to you starting EXYT. Mm-hmm. And it scaled quite rapidly, right? In just 16 months to 3.6 million in revenue. What did you do differently going into this business compared to the first one that allowed you to scale that rapidly as well?
You've got to have you've got to know what good talent looks like, and be able to hire and acquire that. And we'd already had some product market fit that we're able to expand on. So, obviously I started the company at 23, that then around 30, there was a 8-figure a year business. And then I moved into the education space. That, we're going back a few years now. That was probably 2011 when I started in what was the coaching industry. I wouldn't classify ourselves there anymore, but the last 15 years now, we've been implementing these things into founder-led businesses. And so the idea was that there were a lot of learnings, A, from the first business, but B, from having exposure to a lot of companies over the years, to be able to help understand what IP was required. We call them installs now, which is like a content install that goes into a business that, if you kind of think about it like there's a wall in front of you and all these little you know, like a shoe rack type thing, and you've got all these little shoes in there, and then you pull them out. But each of those is a content install that gets plugged into a business that solves a particular problem. And so when it solves the problem doesn't exist anymore. So that people don't come to you, so that people make decisions on their own type thing, so that, you know, that thing never needed to exist. And so it just comes from the learnings. It's come from seeing what's worked over 15 years. So starting EXYT, what was it, 2023, April 23, it was just, I'd had that much exposure to the marketplace. I'd obviously, you know, built and sold some equity in the past, and I'd had exposure to other businesses as well, where I'd had equity in other businesses. And like the raw truth is that most of the lessons came from seeing what didn't work and finding solutions for it, and just being too smart or dumb to quit.
Yes, you definitely got to be very, very dumb to not want to quit, right? And just stick to the thing. When a founder comes to you, right? Let's just say that someone comes and he's the bottleneck, he's stressed out, he has no time, the business relies purely on him and doesn't grow without him. What framework do you normally go through so that you can identify the first steps for that founder to take to start removing himself?
Yeah, so our process includes like a bit of a launch sequence that fundamentally gets to the bottom of exactly where the bottleneck is inside of that business. Everyone comes to us, you know, so we work with companies generally between one on the low end and up to about $50 million. Generally that's between 10 and about 70 or 80 on the team is what we have at the moment. But the problems are the same, right? And so it doesn't matter if you're doing $1 million or, you know, 20 or $50 million, the same problems can show up because the infrastructure isn't built for the level of the business that it's at. So my team's job is to go in, you know, their role fundamentally is to be an integrator of the IP that we have. And so their job is to go in, you know, survey the landscape, see what's going on, and actually pinpoint to go, this is the biggest bottleneck. So we operate in 6-week cycles, similar to tech, so that we have, you know, cycle kickoff, and then 3 weeks through, we have a momentum session. And then obviously cycle finishes and another cycle starts. And so through those cycles, the objective is to take the IP, plug it into the businesses, make sure that it sticks versus just moving on to the next thing, but actually integrating them properly so the problems go away.
In terms of removing a founder as well, do you find that usually it has to do something with hiring a specific position, in most cases, the initial steps, or is it more systems that need to be first optimized and then go into hiring? How does that normally look based on your experience?
Every company is different, you know, so some people come to us and they might have 10 on the team and they all report to the founder and they have no management. And so the founder is just like drowning with everything. Some people come to us with a leadership team in place already. So they might have, you know, 4 or 5 heads of departments, but the founder is still the bottleneck because the infrastructure, once again, hasn't grown. They haven't done it properly, you know. And so is it systems or is it people? Every business is different. You know, like I said before, everyone comes with a different amount of money in the bank. Everyone comes with a different level of team. Some founders have really big businesses and, it looks epic from the outside. But when you actually get on the inside of the business, it's chaotic. And sometimes that's going to be, you know, and in most, if not all cases, it's a function of team. You know, the team either aren't at the level that they need to be, or they haven't been trained on the processes, or they have no processes to follow. So yeah, sometimes it's team, sometimes it's process, sometimes it's the team hasn't been trained on the process. And yeah, like I said, it's just this is when we need to go in and have a look at it and go, is it this or that? And then because we operate through those 6-week cycles of planning and execution, that means that we're able to diagnose this is going to be the biggest constraint that we need to move. So once we move this, it'll solve problems. When it solves problems, you don't have the problem anymore. But often, you know, solving a bottleneck or a constraint here is going to create another one just below it, right? And so it's like, oh, we solved this, but now we created a bottleneck here. And in my opinion, that should be the role, at least that's the role that I take on as a founder, to be able to go in and go, right, let's solve this constraint, then we'll move to the next one.
Usually when you work with a founder as well, let's say that they're looking to not do anything on the business, be completely removed, so it's its own operating organism basically, so they can successfully fully exit. What is the time looks on average for a founder to be fully out of the business to a business that runs completely without them and successfully can grow without them as well?
I'd say on the short end, like probably 9 to 12 months, and on the long end, 3 years. I think our job, like I spent a lot of time in kind of what is the coaching industry, and over time I saw a lot of gaps in that fundamentally I think, these days coaching is designed to be able to keep people in, stuck in programs, and it's designed effectively for me to continue to drag you along to constantly get paid from you. And is retention, an important thing? Yes, it is for a company, but if you constantly need, to show up every week or a month forever, have you actually really ever solved the problem? And so our job is actually to go in and to be able to solve the problem. And so that's why, some people, probably 2 or 3 people in January, February this year, people that have been with us for 12 months, 15 months, I was like, you guys are done, done. If you want to go to the next level, go and take a long holiday. When you want to come back, if you want to go to the next level, cool. Otherwise, you're done. Haley sold half of her business for multi-6-figure valuation and paid off most of her mortgage. And so it's like, you're good. If you ever want to go to, 5 locations instead of 2 or 3, then great, let's talk about that. So for me, there is an end game. And I think otherwise, did it really ever solve the problem? I don't know if I answered your question there, but I think that's our job is to go in and fix things. My dad was a printer, worked in a factory 16 hours a day until he had, heart problems at 50 for the first time. And so I just saw this constant hard working, and obviously there was no education around back then, but there was just constantly hardworking, and just not fundamentally being able to get to a place that, was successful for him, and unfortunately ended, through health issues for him, that he wound the whole thing down and, went and got a job. And so the passion for me comes from like making sure that, I got 3 and 5-year-old girls. I want to spend time with them. I want to be around for them. I want to be able to go on holidays. I want to do these things. And so I look at other founders in the same way. And the lens that I look through it all is like, when I'm here, I want to be working, and I love working, and that's different for everyone. I think everyone needs purpose. I think if you lose your purpose, what are you doing? You're not sure what you're doing. And so that stuff for me is like really probably underpins everything that like we're about as a company. And so for us to be able to solve a problem is actually celebrated here. When we offboard somebody that's successfully, whether they sold their business or whether they just got a leadership team in place so that they can go spend, Mike last year, electrical services business, in the last 9 weeks of the year, spent 6 weeks away from his business, and the leadership team ran the whole thing. 6 months before, he was drowning, absolutely the operational bottleneck. And so it's, we have a metric in the company, which is how many people churn, i.e. leave us, that have successfully completed the job and we did the right job. And so we measure that separately than people that leave that aren't quite done in our eyes. And we fight for the people that aren't done. And we say, you're not done yet, like you're getting off too soon, and we'll fight to keep them. And the people that are done, and it's like, go, you did exactly what the brand promise is, and we celebrate that. So yeah, there's obviously a bit of a heartfelt thing in all of this for me as well, that I think if we can give people the freedom to spend time with their family, to travel, to do the things they want to do, like how many laps of this thing are we going to get? It's my belief this is the one life that we get. So why don't we make it a good one and spend time with the people that we care about at the same time? It's not an either or, I'm ranting a bit here, but like, it's absolutely not like business or life, and sure, I've worked the 16-hour days and did for a long time to be able to get to this level of understanding and, obviously built successful businesses along the way. But yeah, it definitely doesn't have to be business or life. It should be both. So yeah.
I love what you guys stand for, especially on the side of trying to make sure that the job gets done and then off you go. We accomplished the mission, right? You wanted to basically be removed from the business, and you don't kind of keep people, in an infinite loop of never solving the problem, which is what a lot of coaching stuff, as focus on. They try to keep the people trapped in a loop where the problem is constant forever, if that makes sense. And yeah, as a founder myself too, like that feeling that you feel like you can't disconnect, that you always have to be on, and everything comes crumble if basically you go away or you go on vacation or whatever. So I love what you're standing up for. I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well, because one thing that becomes very apparent now in this new age of basically social media, being online, making content, having a personal brand in a world of AI, which I also want to get your thoughts on. The way that we see it is that some of the best business owners and founders that we work with these days, they have fully removed of everything but being the face of the business and kind of making content or trying to, in a way, basically drive more revenue through those actions, through being online. What do you see consistent across some of the best businesses right now when it comes to that marketing segment as well?
How do you mean? Like a founder's moving themselves to be the kind of the key person of influence to generate the traffic?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a high leverage move, right? I mean, here we are. So it's your ability to be able to get information, from the founder into the marketplace. I think I love this, and there's a part of me that wishes I didn't have to do it. I think I like building businesses and solving problems, but it seems to be a necessary evil. Are there other ways to do it? Yes, but it's a great way to get more exposure. And so generally, what we talked about earlier in terms of founders removing themselves from operations, generally it's moving into that more leverage position, like building those relationships and developing those, whether it's with a mass market similar to this, or just, it's the golf day for this business, or it's, the suppliers for this, or it's putting on their own thing. That seems to be one of the highest stake things that, can and needs to be done.
Now, when someone comes to you and they say, hey, Andrew, my goal is to exit the business for the maximum exit amount that I can. Like that's the goal that I have over the next few years. What are the different segments of the business that you focus on so that they have the maximum revenue potential for that exit as well?
Yeah, if you're looking to sell, it depends who you're looking to sell to. You don't have to fix the entire business if there's a strategic acquisition. I just had a call earlier on today with they've got a marketplace. I won't sort of say the business, but they've got a marketplace. So there's a supply side and a demand side that they need to market to for both of them, and attract both of those customers. They want to get somewhere between $5 and $10 million exit in the next few years. And so our job is to sort of rework and reposition the business to be able to achieve that. We don't have to solve everything. The company that they want to get acquired by already has the infrastructure. So the conversation with him was just, okay, like they're not going to pay for this bit, but they'll pay for all of this. And so if you are going to buy the business and, there's another business similar to yours and you want to buy it and you want to roll it all in, you may not need to fix operations. They may be acquiring you because of operations. If you're selling to Joe Public, then you probably want to try and pretty up the whole thing and and also show the potential of what is available. So, many factors come into this. Obviously, there's obviously, when do they want to exit? Why do they want to exit? What are they looking to achieve from it? And then it's just going through the process of, is this strategic acquisition? Are we just trying to find somebody to come in and, buy themselves a job? And then strategically we go, okay, here's the stuff that we have to fix. Here's the stuff we don't need to touch. It's not going to increase your valuation. And then we get to work on fixing the stuff that needs attention.
When they're looking to sell, a founder looking to sell, and they're trying to get the highest valuation or multiple, what are the 3 things that they should be working on in order to get the highest valuation and multiple for the exit?
I'll just have to revert to what I just said. It's like there's no one size fits all for any business, right? If you're just trying to sell to, if someone's trying to buy themselves a job and it just happens to be a company, then profit margin, full stop. There's one thing to fix, and it's margin. So I think if you fix margin, then you fix all your, if you fix the EBITDA of the business, then that's going to pay you a higher valuation. But reverting to the previous question on that as well, it's like, why, who are you looking to sell and why are they buying it and why do they want the business? And as long as you understand that, then you actually know what needs to be fixed. But, to sort of sit here and say there's one size fits all is just going to lead people down the wrong path. There are things to fix, there are things not to fix. Sometimes it is, let's fix it all, but fundamentally fixing it all should be, how do we increase profit margin and positioning for who and when, who we want to sell to and when.
This one thing that I've heard a few people talking about, which is at certain EBITDA, your multiple can increase dramatically. Is that correct? Yeah. And what's usually that range looking like too?
I wouldn't be able to quote exactly. I know, private equity, of course, will pay a multiple over a certain profit, EBITDA number. To be able to quote it, I wouldn't want to misquote exactly what it is. Different industries, different things. And once again, why is that acquisition, possible? I think if we look at the, largely, the private equity model or the roll-up model specifically is, if I can buy $1 million businesses, and then I can, strip out all the operational complexity and put efficiencies into the business, I can then sell that for a much greater multiple. And so it just depends on what the business is, what is the valuation of that business, if it was just one versus if it's many. Yeah.
One thing that comes to mind as well, talking about exits, is the tax element, right? That will come into play. What do you do when a founder comes to you talking about that side of planning for the taxes? What do you consider usually when it comes to the company structures or anything that will put them in a position where they basically don't have to pay, 47% on the taxes?
It's wild how many people just have ABNs and don't even have companies that have multi-million-dollar businesses. It's insane. I guess the reason that I steered clear of that last question a little bit and this one is like the advice, this is not financial advice. We're not accountants. We're not financial planners, and everyone's situation's different, So I've got, multiple entities. I think I've got 6 or 7 entities. They all form a different part of, exit the company, strategic investments that we make. But, then we've got bucket companies and other things happening like that. And so our advice is we'll draw a line between here's the stuff that we talk about, which is how do we increase your valuation, how to position yourself in the right spot, how to set your business up for the ultimate either lifestyle exit to get your time back and high profit margin, or sell for a life-changing amount of money. And anything below that line, which is what structure should I be in? What's my valuation? Like, yes, we have tools and so forth around those to be able to give estimates, but fundamentally, the market's going to pay what the market's going to pay, what the market's going to pay, right? And so, you could say, service businesses might be between 3 and 5, but then you go to a greater size business, and if this is probably a good point to leave, that if you think you're going to get a 5 or an 8 or a 11 times multiple, you better be out of the business, and you better be non-operational in the business, because if you are the business, you are trapped in the business of your own making. No one's going to pay anything for it. I think a great example of this is, Dave, who was, I used to work for Dave a few years ago now, when I was a plumber. And I saw probably about 4 or 5 years ago, Dave posting on social media saying, "Hey, I'm selling everything." I was like, "Oh, Dave, you selling the business? I could share the screenshot with you. I can't sell the business is me." And so then we had some conversations. I was like, "Would you give it another year or two if you could, get this thing off your back?" And got to the answer, which was no. Essentially, it was a fire sale at the end of a 30 or 40 year career as a plumber. The business was him. And it got to the point at the end of all of that, and there was nothing to sell. There was a few tools, there was probably $10,000 or $20,000 worth of beat up tools and so forth that, he tried to sell online for 3 or 4 months. There was no business to sell because the business was him. And so, Dave's probably mid-50s, mid to late 50s now. He's, probably got multi-million dollars in terms of investments. He's done well for himself. But had he played his hand right and thought about it, 3 to 5 years earlier, he could have been in the position to be able to sell his business and, set it up in that direction. So I think that it's really important to kind of know where you're going and what you're trying to achieve. And a lot of people don't. I'm, 46 now, going on 47, a couple of young girls, not 25 anymore, although I feel it sometimes. And so it's just, what is that next stage? What does that next stage actually look like? I'm always going to work. I need to build and create and, climb mountains, either physically or metaphorically. And so that's just who I am. Not everyone's wired in the same way. Some people could just go and, sit on the beach and relax, but that's not me. And I think most of the people that we work with, like 90% of I think it's like 84% of the people that come and work with us, they just want a better life. 16% of people want to sell in the next 1 to 3 years. And so it's not to say, because often people come to us and they're drowning, right? And so the question is, if we could solve the problems that you have right now that are causing you stress and anxiety and low profit, do you love your business? And it's like, yeah, I love the industry. I just wish all the problems would go away. All right. And they're actually experts in what they do. Most people don't think that. They come to us and think we're, God's gift to every industry. And it's like, we have a set of IP that gets plugged into the back of lots of different industries. And that is our job. And every company that we work with has a different experience with us based on how much money they got, based on how much, profits in the business, based on what we actually need to solve for them, based on what they want. And so our job is to take the IP, plug it into the business, and then be able to step back so that they can step back and then let the thing run. And then it's just, what is that future job description going to be? Are you going to be the key person of influence? Are you going to be the rainmaker? Are you going to be do you just want to sit in the back office? Because some people do want to do that. I'd be very happy, I think, sitting in the back office of the business and just being the operator, building the company. And it's, the business needs a face. So here we are.
That what you mentioned of Dave, that would have been brutal, just working 40 years to not have something that, you can now pass on to someone else to take it to the next level and obviously get a reward for all the hard work that you put in for all that time. So curious as well to ask you, is that something that going into building a business, someone should be straight off the bat thinking, how can I make sure I build this infrastructure in a way that doesn't rely on myself? Or should they be building and get to certain stage in which then they go, okay, cool, I need to now be focusing on removing myself?
I would say, the segment of the market that we go after in terms of our advertising and so forth is people that are already bottlenecked, right? And so you don't know you've got a problem until you've got a problem. And then some people do something about it and some people enjoy having a problem. And so I would say that where we enter the market and where we enter companies is I'm drowning, I'm the bottleneck, I need help, I've tried to fix it, I don't know how to fix it. And 5-10% of the companies that come in, they already know what they're doing, they just want to go faster. Graham came in, was he with us like 15 months or something like that, went from 300K a month to 1.2 in that period of time, built an entire leadership team, and is acquiring businesses right now as we speak, and kind of traveling around the country with lots of holidays last year with his family and with his team. That's one example, and so it's getting that infrastructure in place is going to give you choices, and when you get it in place, you have the ability to decide what you want to do with your time, and I think that's the ultimate freedom.
When you help as well a business plan for an exit or take that next step because they basically have successfully removed themselves, so now they're in a position where an exit is possible. What are the steps from there in terms of like, how do you find a buyer for that business? How do you look for one? How do you advertise that the business is up for sale? Like, what does that look like from then on?
Yeah, I think, so if we assume it's like strategic acquisition, so I'll use the example before that I was talking about, that he's got a marketplace, there's obviously supply side and demand side, there's one key player in the marketplace. There are a few players, but there's one key player in the marketplace. But let's say there was 100, let's say that's I guess an online business. If we assume it's a general, everyday brick and mortar type business, then it would be who are the people that are looking to, buy these businesses. Russell Brunson talks about the Dream 100, right? If anyone's sort of done any marketing, who are your Dream 100 clients? You just need to think about it in exactly the same way of like, what are the top 100 people that might buy this business, acquire me, and why? And then, a layer deeper on that is, who would pay the highest valuation? Because like the worst thing that you could be in is like there's one person trying to buy the business, there's no demand. Like I live in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. If anyone understands that market or a property market, I assume across the country in most areas, there could be 30 people at an auction, all bidding for the same property type thing. And so what do you think the price is going to do? And so you want to be able to create your own market in these situations so that you essentially, if you can get 3 or 4 or 5 people actually at the table, bidding for your business because you put together a really good strategic plan of, who are the top 100 or, 200, what does it need to be? Think about it like any sales pipeline. Essentially you've got an asset. Ideally it's an asset that you're trying to sell, and you've built it into a great asset. So then it'd be like, great, who are the 100 people that are going to buy you? A lot of people will say, oh, there's like 2 or 3. It's like, no, if there's 3 and 2 people drop out because they just say no, you've got 1 and you're not going to get that much money for it. I think, some people are looking for a fire sale because they're tired and they just want the thing gone. And then, they'll come to us, and then they're the type of people that'll get a low valuation because, they're just trying to burn the thing to the ground and get out of it. But after you pay tax and, pay off a mortgage and buy a couple of cars like most people do, then you just end up in a situation that you didn't get that much for it at the end of it. And so for me, the reason that we talk about it in the sense of it's got to be a life-changing amount of money, without a shadow of a doubt, that's got to be multi-millions of dollars. Because if it's not, let's say the thing's producing $500,000 a year profit, and you're going to go and sell the thing for $1 million, then that's 2 years. You might as well have just stayed in the business, made some improvements, work with us to make improvements on the business, get it to a point that you don't hate it and that it doesn't, eat your life. And then as long as you do that, you've then got a bit of a cash machine to be able to achieve that. the challenge is just working with, you know, founders and owners who are like, there's no good people in my area. And then it's like, no, there's good people, you know, how's the leadership? How's the systems and the processes? And I think to that point, you know, calling some of the beliefs out of people's heads, it's like, but you don't understand, my business is different. It's like I've been doing this for 15 years. I can tell you, I've had equity in multiple companies. You know, some of the people that I've worked with over the years, I've had equity in their businesses, but oh man, I'll go in on this business and this will be the thing. And it's like every business has problems, and it's the problems that you have right now that you know and understand well, that if you actually just solve those problems, you wouldn't have those problems anymore, beyond thinking the grass is greener on the other side. It's not greener. It's just not. So
common thinking, right? Always thinking like it's always greener. That model seems better. That industry is better.
Yeah, it's the good-looking guy or girl, you know, walking down the street when you're with your partner, and you think, oh man, and it's like, yeah, and you think that person, you know, doesn't represent some of the same challenges you might be having when we ran an event on the Gold Coast 2 or 3 weeks ago. The example that I used in the room is, you know, for people that get divorced, often, not always, but often, it's like you get into a relationship and then you find the relationship's bad and you don't work on yourself, and so you leave the relationship and then you magically end up in another relationship that magically has the exact same problems as what the first one did. Why? Because you never changed, because you never got better, because you never improved yourself, because you never like had a hard look in the mirror. And so business is the same. It's like, you know, you got, we don't really work with people trying to get product market fit, but, you know, if people have a lead generation or a sales problem, you fix the problem. You know, if people have a, you know, delivery problem, fix the problem, and then the problems will go away. And so it's just, yeah, the grass really is greener. And what do they say? It's greener where you water it. I think if people actually just fixed and solved the problems in their own business and made that a key focus, then they wouldn't have the problems. And like, if you think about it too, it'd be great to kind of draw this graph out. But, you know, if you, let's say you've got a business right now and then you want to sell the business, yeah, sure, you might, you know, structure yourself properly, talk to your accountant. This is not financial advice, but like, you know, there'll be a certain amount of money that you take out of it. And then when you've got that money and you buy your house and you pay a few mortgage or you buy your cars or whatever, there's not that much money left, and then you've got to start again. But if you actually just stayed in the same vehicle and improved 2 or 3 of the metrics in the business, then you will continue taking X amount of profit and more, and a multiple of that profit, and then you could hold that business for 10 years and be way further ahead. But it's easy to want to burn the whole thing down. And that is, like you say, that is, you know, it's what a lot of people do.
Now, you have obviously had equity on many different businesses and worked with hundreds of business owners and founders. Based on your experience, what are the best businesses and the best business models for exiting the business, in terms of the ones that can produce potentially the highest multiples, the ones that are potentially better in terms of replacing the founder compared to the ones that are not as good when it comes to exit and multiples, and that are much harder to take the founder out of it?
The best business is actually, I would say, the business that you know. Like here's the thing, right? It's like everybody is the expert in their own business, and they just don't realize it because they haven't solved the fundamental business issues. So we work with designers, architects, you know, blue collar, white collar trade businesses. We work with, you know, hairdressing salons and multi-location businesses like that. I spent quite a bit of time in the health and fitness industry. We've got, I don't know, you know, product businesses, online marketplaces, you know, SaaS businesses. So in terms of valuation, you could say SaaS, but you want to, you know, you sort of said before, let's talk about, you know, we'll talk about AI. Who knows, you know, what that's going to look like at scale, but you would assume that SaaS businesses are probably going to be the highest multiples. But, you know, you do the right roll up, or you structure the business properly, you'd be able to achieve the same or better multiples just by like achieving that. What is the best? It's the business that you know. Because like if you haven't, you know, to the point before, if you haven't solved your team issues, if you haven't solved your recruiting issues, why do you think it's going to be better anywhere else? It's not. And if you want to solve the problem. So do you want to solve the problem, or do you want to sit around and complain about the problem? Because if you want to sit around and complain about the problem, don't think the problem is not going to exist somewhere else. And, you know, someone will always say, yeah, but AI, you don't need people. Cool. You do you. You know, like, I think, you know, most of the problems for founders are people problems, right? It's like they know the business, they know the industry. And so if you can't run and manage effective people, and if you can't recruit epic talent, and if they can't come in and step in and run and manage and lead a department for you, then you are deficient of the skills to be able to solve the problem. So are you going to learn the skills and go through the hard work of that? Or are you just going to sit around and say, it's my industry, it's my area? Because it's not, you know, in most cases. It is in some, but it's not in most.
Climbing the mountain will always suck regardless. So just be
Yeah,
okay
man.
it's just going to be hard either way, right?
Yeah, it's going to be hard either way. And like, if you think, you know, I think this is a good mental frame, right? It's like, you know, tying your shoelaces at one point in your life was tough, right? And for most people, I would assume now it's not that hard. And so it actually, you know, the 4 levels of learning is that, I've got to think about this. It is unconscious incompetence, which is like, I don't know what I don't know. Conscious incompetence. Oh, now I know I'm bad at this. Then it's conscious competence. Now I know I have to think about what I do to be able to achieve it. And then it's unconscious competence. Now I just do it automatically. And so all the problems in your business that used to be problems that aren't problems anymore, that is the mountain that you already conquered. And you know how to solve it. And so all of the problems that people have are just that. It's that you're at the base of the mountain, or you're partway up the mountain, you haven't been on the mountain long enough, or you stop climbing halfway up and turn around, or you're still there and it's stormy and it's shitty and it sucks, but you're still there. And then if you turn around and go back, or if you stop, then game over. But if you keep going and you actually acquire more skills, you know, plug some installations into your business to be able to solve the problems, become a better leader, look yourself in the mirror, you know, work a bit harder than what you actually do versus what you think you do. These are the things that are going to get people up and over the hump of what it is. And then that becomes another thing that is just an automatic, right? And so that is the pathway for all of us. You know, the problems that I had in my business 3 years ago when I started the business, I look back and they pale in comparison to the shit that I'm dealing with today. Why? Because I'm trying to conquer the next piece. And it's the same for all of us, you know. If we stop growing, then we have the problems that we have. But if we're trying to grow, you know, and develop and get more time back and put more profit in the bank, then there's a mountain to climb, you know. And if you don't want to climb the mountain, cool. But if you want the outcome, then you have to climb the mountain. So figure it out.
And if you don't climb the mountain, someone in your industry will, and someone will end up taking the customers as well, right? Curious to ask you, as someone that has taken equity in many different businesses, what do you look for when you take equity on a business?
Generally, do I believe in the business model, and do I believe in the person that is, you know, behind it? And so arguably haven't had a lot of success, quite honestly. I think it'd be easy to sit here and say that everything's worked out, and the honest truth is it hasn't. And I think where I entered, you know, some really good learnings, like where I entered some of those, I entered with the skill set that I had at the level that I had it, and I assumed that I made assumptions that the other person was going, you know, I entered these positions to be the amplifier. right? And I probably entered them too early, or I entered them at the right time, and then they thought I was going to pick up the slack on things, and that was never my job. And so they're not bad people, some of these things just didn't get there. Have had success too, but some of these things, they don't always get there. And so, I would say, I've got a greener pastures thing that, there's a thing that I look at consistently that I'm like, man, I want to go and do that. I'd love to, build a roll up and go and sell the thing to private equity. I've got the skills on, I haven't done it, but I've got the skills on how to operationally fix all those things. I've done that, me and my company have done that thousands of times over the last 15 years. And so those skills exist, but I have to constantly bring myself back to like this, and I love what we do. It doesn't mean there's not a wandering eye to go and do a roll up and sell for a multi-8-figure valuation and keep exit going. But I think, to the point that, I talked about there before, it's like you have to, if I solve the problems at the level that we're at, then I won't have the problems that we have, and the other thing seems really attractive, but like this is the business. This is, we're changing lives every single month, and while, I want to build a decent company and, develop the culture and help my team achieve what they want to achieve, these are all key important things that it's not just the partners that we work with, it's also that. But I think, it's a process of sort of realizing your own potential as well. And I think some of those opportunities that I went to get into, and, I've got the scars from it to be able to look back and go, would I get into something else right now? And, I sort of just talked about the idea of what is attractive to me, and the answer is no. This is the only thing that I'm building. Sure, I have an investment portfolio that is active, invest in properties and other things as well, but this is the business. This is the thing to solve. This is the mountain. And I can look up the mountain and realize there's a lot to go. I was talking to my COO about this earlier on today. We can look up the mountain and there's a lot more to go, and get over the hump and turn around and look back and go, wow, we've come a long way. And then you turn around and Everest is up there and you're like, man, there's a lot of work to do. And so if you actually just stayed focused on the thing that you're focused on right now, you would get there faster than trying to distribute your energy across multiple things. And I don't care how good you think you are, unless you've actually solved these problems and be able to sit above a business, anything that you try and do is going to be a distraction from the core thing until you get the core thing right. Anything.
I'm also not surprised about a lot of those equity deals probably not going right, because the stats are super clear. Most businesses are going to go out of business, right? Within the first year or 5 years or 10 years. So the chances of, I guess, getting it wrong, right, are almost like guaranteed, right? To finding that those unique deals that then will give, I guess, asymmetric returns compared to the ones that didn't work out, right?
I would say that, some of those businesses are still going. So it's not that the business didn't make it. It's that, I had 50% equity in a company and was in the business for, I think, 9 months or something like that. And I was like, come on, you've got to get it to here, you've got to get to here, and, strategically advising and so forth. And I was just like, I'm done. Like, all the capital, take it, let's sign it all back over to you. Great person, still in contact with them today, but I was just like, look, I'm not adding value here, and this is taking, I'm putting a lot of energy in here and it's not getting the return. And so for what I came into this is not effective. So it doesn't mean that like all of those have gone out of business. It's just for me to be able to get a ROI on my time. I value my time, and I've got to get a certain, amount of ROI on that. And so you've got to figure out, what deserves your time and what doesn't.
After working as well with hundreds of founders, what have you found is the common pattern on the ones that never manage to get themselves out of their business, or they keep basically creating this perpetual business that just drains their time, that doesn't give them the freedom that they got into business for? What do you find is common amongst the ones that never make it through to the other side?
I think the unpopular one that like comes to mind is just attention. People giving their attention to this thing long enough to be able to solve the problem. I remember, you know, my girls are 3 and 5 now. I remember before I had kids and I'd be talking to founders about their businesses, and they would, you know, like, come on, you know, you got to get on with it. And they would say, yeah, but like kids, you know, and it's like, man, how long are you going to give me that excuse? And, you know, boy, did I ruffle some feathers. And it's like, okay, I don't have kids right now, so I don't know. And like, I was very clear and very happy about that. And so tell me about all the people that do have kids that have figured this out. And so for me, it's just, are you going to give this thing the attention that it needs for the period of time that it needs to be able to get a breakthrough, to move that up to the next level, to be able to solve these problems? Man, I was at 15, I dropped out of school at 15 and I was a plumber, and I went to TAFE, and I spent, you know, 10 years on the wrong side of the tracks, and I turned my life around and got to this point. Like, most of the people that you look to that have actually achieved something, and, you know, I wouldn't classify myself, you know, on top of the mountain by any stretch of the imagination, but most of the people that you look around at, they're just stuck with it long enough and painful enough to continue to get it going. And so, you know, here we are. I built it from 0 to 3.6 in 16 months, and had a great run, and then ran into some bottlenecks and needed to restructure the team and a lot of things and get some people out of the business and go through hell to be able to solve those problems. And we're 100 times better company because of it, you know? And so can you give it enough attention over an extended period of time and continue to eat shit and keep marching forward until you actually solve the problems? I'd say most people quit too soon, and a lot of people won't like that answer, but bad luck. That's my opinion. I think, you know, you either want it or you don't, and you're going to do it or you're not. And we've all got circumstances, and we've all got conditions, and yeah, most people think that people get handed out money and then that becomes the reason why that, you know, they achieved it. And I think if you actually, you know, all of my, you know, friends, colleagues, peers that are multi-8-figure businesses, like, none of them got handouts. So it's just an excuse that exists that, you know, shouldn't excuse. And in fact, most of them had to dig themselves out of some condition in their life, which built the resilience that then, you know, built the tenacity, which built the business. And so you know, it sounds super cliche, but it really is like the person that you become on the journey. Like, you know, it's great to sort of hear that stuff on podcasts, but you don't get it until you really get it. But you have to eat shit for long enough and keep yourself in the game long enough to continue to march forward, to like build something, to then be able to come out the other side of, you know, whatever that was, and be in a much better spot for yourself, for your family, for your legacy, whatever matters.
One thing that I always tell my team is we just have to be the last man standing. Because one thing that I have seen on my own journey, coming, 10 years ago from Venezuela, and kind of similar to you, you went into being a plumber, I went into being a dentist. I committed 6 years of my life to that. And then I quit all of that 10 years ago to basically make videos and eventually make videos for business owners and help them with their marketing and brands. And yeah, as long as you just have that long-term horizon, right? And you're, as you said, if you're willing to eat more shit than everyone else and you can just stay longer in the game than everyone else, eventually you will win. Not because you are the best at it, but because everyone else will quit or they will eventually get eaten, right? So it's like, can you just stay in the game longer than everyone else? Right?
Yeah, I think it's 15 years to become an overnight success, right? And I'm 46 and I started, in this kind of world 15 years ago this year. And if you look, I look at other people that have popped off in the last few years type thing. And it's like, yeah, they've been at it, you know, and there's a lot of, you know, younger guys and girls around these days. And then you still look at those stories and go, you know, I was doing other shit at 20, they were doing this. And now they're 30 or, you know, early 30s type thing. And it's like, yeah, it takes a long time to like, yeah, it's basically you've got to work through your own habits and behaviors. Like, we don't have business problems, we have life problems that show up in our business, right? And so it's your habits and it's your behaviors and it's your commitment and it's your follow through and it's, you know, what good looks like and it's your standards and it's, you know, and most of the time yes, you know, mentorship or getting advice or getting support can provide a lot of that. And, you know, I wouldn't classify us as a coaching business. There are some things that we cannot teach people, and there are some things that you can tell people till they're blue in the face and then they don't get it until they get it. And, you know, they get it when, you know, a key team member leaves and you told them that, you know, there was going to be a gap if they didn't close it down, or they get it when, you know, someone quits or someone takes them to Fair Work, or, you know, this happens, or, you know, a competitor moves into their market. And it's that wisdom. And so I think fortunately for the partners that we work with and, you know, for my team, I've seen a few things and I've experienced a lot of them. And even for me to be able to share with my team and, you know, for yourself as well, to be able to share with your team exactly what it's like. And this is no shade on team members because we all need them and they're absolutely valuable to our company. But like, going back to the example before, try telling a parent what it's like to parent when you don't have kids. Good fucking luck, you know? And it's the same in business as well. It's like, try tell somebody what it's like when money's tight and, you know, you're feeling like shit, or, you know, you've got other problem, or you've got to solve all these problems and still show up and put a smile on your face. And like, we all have our own circumstances, we all have our own conditions, but being a founder is tough. And yeah, if, like you said, and like you say to your team, if you can stay in the game long enough, you will get there. It's just, what is the lure of the attractive thing that you keep looking at, and can you stay focused on this thing long enough to be able to get there? You know, like, probably another point on that too, like a mate of mine's a Navy SEAL, and he would say, man, sometimes you got to know when to quit. And so there is that, and most people quit too early.
I'm curious to ask you, building Exit, what has been the biggest challenge you had to overcome as a founder to get it to where it is right now?
It was definitely the restructure. So, you know, I said before, we grew from 0 to 3.6 in 16 months, and, you know, we were on fire. And then we had, you know, I had a key person in the business that I thought was a certain standard and a certain level, and unfortunately wasn't. And so that caused a lot of challenges. You know, I think as you grow your business, there are seasons, and some people are going to be great for startup Phil. You know, some people are going to be great for product market fit. But then as you get out of that phase and as you have to move into more, you know, scale phase, then often it's different people. You can't have people that are all over the map on things. You know, there needs to be a lot more structure, a lot more routine in the business, a lot more process development and following. Why? Because you figured out what works. Now you just need to do more of what works. And so that was a great lesson for me, that, you know, what I thought we had and where I thought we were and where we actually were different places. And so we had a lot of growth quite quickly. We hit a ceiling. I looked around and like changed a lot of things, and then it was a 6-month kind of pull down and rebuild to be able to build the team, the infrastructure, clean up a lot of the operational processes that had a lot of drift in them. And so by far that was the hardest phase of exit. And, you know, we're in a spot now where we've attracted and added some epic talent in the last few months, and cleaned up a lot of the operational things that needed attention. And here we go, you know, let's see how we go.
After building many businesses for many years, What's the hardest truth you have had to accept about yourself as a founder?
It's always my fault. Like I've got a little person on my left shoulder, and a little person on my right shoulder, and the one on my right shoulder for a long time carried a lot of injustice about things. You know, don't you understand? I shouldn't have to do this. And this was not like external things that I was saying, but internal like conversation that I was having of like, fuck man, like I shouldn't have to put up with this. I'm already at this level of, you know, I built a 8-figure company before I, you know, like all of these things. And so when it all boils down, you know, like the example that I gave of the restructure that we had to go through last year and the difficult circumstances, is like that was all my fault. You know, what I saw, what I didn't see. And then when you uncover these things, it's like, okay, well, what is the solution? And often it's the person staring back at you in the mirror. And so for me, you know, and I would say this is part of the 15 years to become an overnight success, at least for me. Like one of the big things is, I would say, like you know, in the last 15 years, I haven't had a very big external ego type thing that you would think that I was a crazy egomaniac. And at the same time, I ran injustice based on ego, which was like, oh man, why do I have to? Why should I? You know, I shouldn't have to, and all that sort of stuff. And so where I got to with that, you know, and that voice would used to take a lot of, you know, might be a day, it might be a week, it might be a day type thing on certain issues. Whereas that can still show up now today, but it's like, do you want the fucking outcome or not? Then get over it, because no one cares. And so to be able to bring what sometimes might have been months, right, earlier on in my career, and to be able to bring that down to minutes. You know, we had somebody that looked like great talent come into the business and lasted 3 to 4 weeks, and I was like, do you want the outcome? Then you better get in and solve the problem yourself. And so whether that's like hiring somebody else or jumping back in to do it or raising the standard of something or whatever, you can run as much injustice or stress or frustration as what you want, and the answer is the person in the mirror is the reason that it happened. And so that's the hardest thing and the most freeing thing at the same time, because now it's like I can absolutely knock it out of the park with like, I'm on board with a solution. Why? Because like I'm so committed to like I won't quit. I'm so committed to getting the outcome no matter what, right? And so it's like, well, who cares? No one cares. People say they care, people empathize with you and sympathize with you, but that does nothing. And so the faster I've learned over probably largely the last 5 years, the faster that I've learned to be able to collapse that gap between frustration and action, you know, is just, you save months. Some people listening to this will save years of their life if they implemented that. And me too. I'm just talking to me. So
that self-awareness is hard to get, especially when you're in the bubble, when the chaos is happening, because that phrase that you said there as well, why do I have to put up with this thing? I'm very familiar with that phrase myself, you know, like, why do I have to put up with this shit? I'm not at that level anymore. Or why did this happen? But as you say, everything comes back to you. You hired the person, you set up the business, you put the systems, you know, you took the client, like it in some weird way always comes back to you, right?
Yeah, you set the KPIs, you manage them or didn't manage the KPIs properly, like you employed the person that was supposed to do that job and they didn't do the job. And you know, we were spending about $500,000 in a department that before I sort of stepped back in and restructured it, moved to less than $200,000 to do the exact same job. And so it's, you know, it's these lessons, you know. Another one from last year, my accountant made a $1.5 million fuck up, who was a friend. And so, you know, it's these repeated frustrations, mistakes, struggles, that these are actually the rubble that you build yourself on. You know, like you have to have these situations in your business or in your life. And if you don't have them, then you probably never get to the next stage because they became the rubble that you could, pour the footing on to build the foundation of the next tier off. And so a lot of these things, that's why I think, for me these days, I'm much closer to like, who cares? Do you want the outcome? Yes, get on with it. Because it's like, all right, I've learned enough lessons over my time. I'm wise enough now because I've learned enough of those lessons that I didn't want any of them. But then you look back on them and go, well, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have the capability for this. And so they become the thing that make you.
What are the 3 most powerful questions that a founder can ask himself in order to successfully remove himself from the business?
What do I actually want? What am I prepared to do to get it? What are the excuses I'm telling myself today that would stop me from starting today? And a fourth one, sorry, I broke your model, but a fourth one would be, am I prepared to do that now?
Dude, I love that. 3rd and 4th are very good questions to ask yourself, especially as you're listening to this. This is a this or that segment. So you just choose one or the other.
Sure.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Sushi or steak?
Oh, do you have to choose? Steak?
Expert or jack of all trades?
Expert.
Product or service business?
Service.
Done for you or done with you?
Done with you.
Done with you or do it yourself?
Done with you.
CEO or founder?
Founder.
Instagram or TikTok?
Instagram.
Instagram or Facebook?
Instagram.
Instagram or LinkedIn?
Instagram.
Instagram or X?
Instagram.
Instagram or YouTube?
YouTube.
YouTube or Spotify?
YouTube.
Photos or videos?
Videos.
Short form or long form video content?
Short form.
Newsletters or podcasting?
Podcasting.
Organic or paid marketing?
Paid.
1 million followers with low conversions or 1,000 raving fans?
1,000 raving fans every day.
Remote talent versus local talent?
Ideally local.
Building a talent or hiring a talent?
Hiring a talent.
A talent at a high price tag or multiple cheap C talent?
Oh yeah, a talent. Every day of the week.
Property investing or shares?
Property.
Property or Bitcoin?
Property.
Property or buying businesses?
Buying businesses.
Building a business or buying a business?
Building a business.
Passion 6-figure business or stressful 8-figure business?
Stressful 8-figure because I can make it not stressful.
Sales or marketing?
Marketing.
Final questions, Andrew. What are the 3 things that you will tell your younger self if you had to build an 8-figure business again?
Well, I think we're on the pathway to do it, and it's not about the it's got nothing to do with the number and everything about kind of what's possible. I think stay focused, be relentless about going deep into all of it and make it as simple as possible. Like, I think when you focus on one thing and you remove as many variables as possible to be able to get the outcome, you just have to master less pieces. And by mastering less pieces, you achieve scale way better, way faster.
Removing the complexity as well. Simple scales, right?
Yeah, totally.
What's the worst business advice you have ever received?
I can do it better myself.
Opposite to that, what's the best business advice that you have ever received?
Don't know that I was given this, but that I received this advice, but the thing that screams is just kind of the same point, which is to stay focused.
Your ability to stay focused on the right thing is probably what's going to unlock the next level of the
100%.
business and everything that you're chasing after. Andrew, thank you very much for coming here today. Where can business owners, founders get in touch with you, connect with you, and potentially engage as well with your advisory and services?
Yeah, so I said Instagram about 11 times there before. So the handle is the Andrew Sparks on Instagram. If you want to connect with me directly, send me a DM and let me know you saw the show. And then myexyt.com, and exit is EXYT. You can go there. There's a founder dependency score. It'll take you less than a couple of minutes to be able to go through to show you where you're trapped potentially in your business. So if you want to go check that out, that'll give you a really good report that's actually usable for you, completely free.
All the links will be down below in the description. If you enjoyed this episode, if you found it valuable, all I ask is share it with another founder or business owner that might also find it valuable themselves. Again, all the links are down below. We'll see you on the next episode. Hey legends, my goal with Founders Playbook is to help 1 million entrepreneurs build successful personal brands and businesses so that they can increase their impact and profits. You can support the mission by simply sharing the podcast with other founders and entrepreneurs. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and follow us on social media. Let's get to work.